Imagine needing an abortion before 1973. You could end up blindfolded in some shady back room and facing a risky procedure from someone who might not even be a doctor. It's a pretty scary thought to think about what women went through before Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, it really shows you how fragile access to safe healthcare can be, and why the story of the Jane Collective is so powerful, you know? This group of women in Chicago, they created a safe and affordable underground abortion service. It's pretty incredible.
So today we're going to really dive deep into their story using the work of historian Moira Donegan. She's really shed a lot of light on this chapter in history. So to start, paint us a picture. What was it actually like for women who were seeking abortions in the late 1960s?
Well, it was a really dangerous landscape. I mean, abortion was illegal in most states, and this really forced women into the hands of the black market. I mean, you could be looking at paying more than 2 months' rent,
Yeah.
and the conditions, just terrifying. A lot of untrained providers operating in really unsanitary environments.
I can't even imagine the fear and the desperation those women must felt, especially with how limited access to contraception was at the time.
Absolutely. The pill was so new then, it wasn't always effective, and it definitely wasn't easy to get. And other options were even more limited. And all of this with hardly any sex education.
Yeah.
And then you've got this huge power imbalance between doctors who are mostly male and their female patients.
So it was like this perfect storm, legal restrictions, social stigma, and then a healthcare system that basically failed women. And this is where Heather Booth comes in. She starts by helping just one woman, a friend's sister, who needs an abortion. But then she does something pretty remarkable.
Yeah, she really became this lifeline for women. Heather meticulously vetted providers, and she would gather feedback from women just to make sure that they were safe. You know, she wasn't just sending them to any provider. She was building a network of trust.
Wow. It sounds incredibly risky, operating like some kind of underground railroad for abortion access. What would even drive her to take on a challenge like that?
Well, she had this really deep sense of compassion, I think, and this belief that women deserved better, and her involvement in the growing feminist movement really cemented that commitment to women's rights and access to safe health care.
So she was really key in formalizing all of this, right? Which eventually became the Jane Collective.
Exactly. And it was around this time that another remarkable woman, Jody Howard, joined the movement. Her story is really crucial in understanding how Jane evolved.
What was it about Jodi's experience that made her such an important figure?
Well, it all started during her second pregnancy. She was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, and it put her in this horrible position. She could delay treatment to protect the fetus, but that meant risking her own life. It was just an impossible choice.
It's heartbreaking that a woman would ever be forced into a position like that.
It really is. And the ordeal didn't end there. After she gave birth, she desperately wanted to get sterilized, but doctors kept denying her request. Finally they agreed. But then, get this, after the procedure, they told her that she was pregnant again.
You can't be serious.
Oh, but it gets worse. To actually get an abortion, she had to convince two psychiatrists that she was suicidal. It was just awful. But, this experience completely changed her. It transformed her from a passive observer into this fierce advocate for immediate action.
Yeah, I can definitely see how an experience like that would lead to such a dramatic shift. So she teamed up with Heather Booth to officially launch the Jane Collective.
Right. Actually, not quite. When Jody joined the group, she really clashed with their approach. They were more focused on theoretical discussions, and Jody, well, she'd been through so much. She just wanted action, real tangible help for women who are suffering.
So it was a sort of clash of personalities and approaches, but both were driven by the same goal, just different ideas of how to get there.
Exactly. But they found a way to come together. They blended Heather's really meticulous approach with Jody's passion for direct action, and that dynamic really shaped the early years of the Jane Collective.
So tell me more about those early days. How did they operate? What were the logistics of running this underground service?
Well, they started small, meeting in living rooms. They set up this clandestine phone line. They would counsel women and connect them to providers that they'd vetted. It was all very hush-hush, They relied on word of mouth and this network of trust they'd built.
And they call themselves Jane.
Well, actually, that came a bit later. At first, they were the Abortion Counseling Service of Women's Liberation. But when women called, they would just ask for Jane, and the name kind of stuck.
It is catchy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Memorable. And it provided some anonymity, which I imagine was pretty crucial given the legal risks they were taking.
Oh, absolutely. Secrecy was everything. They used apartments as fronts and operating locations. They'd transport women discreetly, manage finances under the radar. It was a really complex and risky operation. They had to be incredibly resourceful and adaptable.
It sounds like a logistical puzzle, constantly shifting and evolving to stay ahead of the law.
It really was. But even with all the secrecy and the risk, they never lost sight of their core values. They really prioritized patient autonomy, requiring women to actually say that they wanted an abortion. And they provided emotional support and education throughout the process.
So they weren't just, performing a procedure. They were empowering women to make informed choices about their own bodies.
That's right. It was really a cornerstone of their philosophy. They understood that true reproductive justice meant giving women control over their bodies and their choices, not just, providing a quick fix.
So walk me through a typical day for Jane. How did all of this play out in practice?
So they operated 3 days a week, and they were doing about 30 abortions a day. They had this system where one apartment would be the front. Right. It was a very casual setting, kids running around, maybe even food being prepared, just to make it feel normal.
I bet that helped put the women at ease, made it feel less clinical and more like a supportive environment.
Exactly. They wanted it to feel as normal and as non-threatening as possible. Women could bring a support person, usually a friend or a family member. And then from the front, they'd be taken to another apartment. The place. That's where they performed the procedures. And they'd collect the money on the way there, so there wasn't a paper trail.
Even with their in-house provider, they still maintained all of this security and discretion. It makes me wonder, did they ever worry about getting caught? Like, did they ever feel the walls closing in?
Well, they definitely knew the risks. And the police knew about their activities, but it's interesting to note that a lot of women connected to law enforcement, like wives and daughters of police officers, they were using Jane services too.
That's fascinating. It really shows how widespread the need was, even among those who were supposed to be upholding the law. And it also speaks to the trust that they built, the reputation for safety.
Well, he was known for being gentle and respectful, which was a really stark contrast to a lot of the black market providers who could be quite abusive. He would talk to the women, explain what he was doing, really prioritize their comfort, which was revolutionary at a time when women were constantly dismissed and mistreated by the medical establishment.
He sounds like a true ally.
Yeah.
Advocating for women when so many others failed them.
He really was, and he was undeniably skilled. Women consistently said they had positive experiences, very few complications, but there's a bit of a twist to this part of the story.
All right. Now you've got me hooked. What's the twist?
Well, Dr. Kaufman, he wasn't actually a real doctor.
Wait, he wasn't a doctor? Are you serious? How is that even possible?
It's actually kind of a wild story. He learned the procedure when he was working construction. He was helping out this surgeon who did abortions on the side, and he just picked it up.
He learned to perform abortions, like on a construction site.
Yeah.
That's both, I don't know, impressive and kind of terrifying all at the same time.
It does raise a lot of questions, yeah. But it also shows how dedicated he was to helping women. He really cared about doing it gently and safely, and clearly he had a talent for it.
But how did the Jane Collective react when they found out? I mean, this must have been a huge shock, especially with how much they emphasized safety and trust.
It was definitely a turning point for them. Some members were really upset. They questioned the ethics of it all, of course, but others saw it as an opportunity. Jody Howard, especially, she'd watched so many procedures, even assisted sometimes, and she saw a chance to take things further.
So she already had some hands-on experience. It seems like she was always pushing for more direct involvement.
Yeah, she was. She learned quickly, and she was just so fearless when it came to advocating for women's control over their own bodies. So she started performing abortions herself, and eventually she even trained other women in the collective to do the same.
Wow, that's incredible. They went from relying on this guy who wasn't even a doctor to learning to do it themselves. Talk about taking control of your own destiny. That's a powerful statement.
It was really a pivotal moment for Jane. They committed to self-reliance and women's autonomy and really defied all those social norms and legal restrictions that were trying to control their choices.
And remember, this is all while abortion is still completely illegal, putting them at huge risk.
Yeah.
It's just amazing how brave they were and how much they believed in what they were doing. But things must changed a lot when New York decriminalized abortion in 1970. What was the impact on the Jane Collective?
Well, it really changed things. All of a sudden, women who had money could just travel to New York to get safe, legal abortions. So a lot of the younger, more affluent women that Jane had been serving, they didn't need them anymore.
So their focus shifted to a different group of women.
That's right. Their patients became mostly poor women of color, a lot of whom couldn't afford to travel or had other obstacles to getting care.
That's interesting. You've got this mainly white organization serving mostly black women. Did any tensions or problems come up from that?
It was a complicated situation. They were working within this larger context of racial and economic inequality, and of course that impacted their work. They did try to diversify their membership, but that was hard.
It just goes to show how complex social movements are, right?
Yeah.
Even within a group fighting for the same thing, there are going to be differences in how they want to reach their goals.
Absolutely, and those differences can be even more pronounced when you're dealing with issues as sensitive as race and class and access to healthcare. It's a good reminder that progress isn't always a straight line, and that even the most well-meaning groups have to constantly adapt to the changing world around them.
And for the Jane Collective, those circumstances changed dramatically when their operating location was raided in 1972. Can you tell us what happened?
Well, on May 3rd, 1972, the police, they got a tip from a patient's relative, and they raided the apartment where Jane was performing abortions. It was just chaos. Women were trying to hide, trying to destroy any evidence, and for the Jane members, they were arrested, charged with all these
It
felonies.
must have been absolutely terrifying for everyone there to know that they could be facing years in prison for what they did. So what happened after that?
Their lawyer, Joanne Wilson, she was incredible. A real fighter for women's rights. She worked so hard to get them released. The case went on, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, the Supreme Court issues its decision in Roe v. Wade, overturning abortion bans across the country.
What a coincidence. Must have felt like a miracle. Their legal nightmare just disappeared overnight with this huge win for reproductive rights.
Oh, it was a huge relief. They were all so happy. The charges against the Jane Four were dropped, and they had this big party. They called it the Curate Caper to celebrate the end of their secret operation.
It's a perfect ending to their story. Their courage and their hard work ended up paving the way for a more just future. But even though the Jane Collective disbanded after Roe, their legacy continues, doesn't it? Especially
Yeah.
in the work of modern abortion funds.
Absolutely. The legal situation has changed, but the need for support, for access, it hasn't gone away. These organizations are carrying on the spirit of Jane, providing financial help, logistical help to women who are facing barriers to abortion care, just like Jane did all those years ago.
So they're filling a really important gap, especially in those states where abortion is restricted or banned. It's really inspiring to see how that community spirit and mutual aid has stayed strong even with all the challenges they face today. But I think we should talk more about the impact of these modern abortion funds. What are some of the key lessons that activists today can learn from Jane's experience?
Well, I think direct action is just so important. Jane didn't just sit around talking about the problem. They took action, even if it meant breaking the law. They saw a need and they addressed it. They had this urgency and compassion that really drove them.
And they didn't just offer a service. They really empowered women through education and support and that commitment to patient autonomy.
Yeah, that's right. They knew that true empowerment wasn't about a quick solution. It was about giving women control.
Another thing we can learn from them is their adaptability.
Mm.
They were always changing their approach, especially when abortion was decriminalized in New York. Their whole patient base changed.
They were really good at recognizing when things were changing, and they knew they had to adjust to fit the needs of the community they were serving. That flexibility was so important to their success.
And lastly, I think their dedication to the cause is just incredibly inspiring. Even when they were at risk themselves, even after the raid and the arrest, they never gave up. They truly believed in what they were doing, and they were willing to fight for it no matter what.
That's the power of conviction, right? Of people coming together for something they believe in. It shows that even in the darkest times, hope and courage can win out.
So as we finish up our deep dive into the history of the Jane Collective, what do you hope people listening will take away from their story?
I think it's that we all have the power to make a difference. Jane's legacy isn't just in the organizations that are carrying on their work. It's in everyone who stands up for what they believe in, who fights for justice, who believes in a better world.
And their story is a powerful reminder that even when things seem impossible, ordinary people can do incredible things when they work together. It's a legacy worth remembering, a legacy worth fighting for. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the amazing story of the Jane Collective. It's really amazing to think about how this group of women, they were just ordinary women, how they built this whole network. Working in secret, they defied the law and risked their own freedom, all to help other women. It makes you think about all the individual stories, the lives they touched.
And what's so interesting is that for a lot of the women in Jane, it wasn't just about, providing the abortions. It was this whole journey of self-discovery and empowerment for them too. They
Yeah.
faced their fears, they challenged what they believed in, and they came out of it changed.
It's a side of social movements that we don't often think about. We focus on the impact it has on society, but what about the people who are actually involved? How do they change?
In the case of Jane, the impact was huge. These were women who were raised to follow the rules, to conform, but through the secret work they were doing, they found strength, they found a sense of purpose they might not have ever discovered otherwise.
So it's like they were empowering each other. They were empowering the women they helped and empowering themselves at the same time.
Exactly. They were breaking free from what society expected of them. They were changing what it meant to be a woman in those days.
And that's a legacy that goes beyond any laws or legal battles. It's about the human spirit. It's
Yeah.
about women's resilience and that unwavering belief that we have the right to control our own bodies and our own destinies.
The Jane Collective story really shows us that change often starts small. It starts with regular people who are willing to take huge risks to fight for what they believe in.
And their work is still inspiring activism today,
Hmm.
especially now, with all the challenges to reproductive rights. We've talked about abortion funds carrying on Jane's legacy, but what are some of the lessons that activists can learn from their experience?
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways is the importance of direct action. Jane didn't just, talk about the problem. They took action to fix it. Even when it meant breaking the law, they saw what needed to be done and they just did it. That sense of urgency and compassion, that's so important.
And it wasn't just about doing it. It was about empowering women through education and support and respecting their choices.
Exactly. They knew that real empowerment meant giving women control, not just a temporary solution.
Another important lesson is their adaptability. They were always changing their strategies. Like when New York decriminalized abortion, they had to adapt to a whole new group of women.
Right. They knew how to respond when things changed, and they knew how to tailor their approach to meet the needs of their community. Being flexible like that was key to their success.
And finally, their dedication to the cause is just so inspiring. I mean, they were putting themselves at risk, and even after the raid, the arrest, they never gave up. They believed in what they were doing, and they were willing to fight for it, no matter the cost.
It's really a testament to their conviction, to the power of people coming together and believing in something. And it shows us that even when things seem really dark, hope and courage can still win.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Jane Collective, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this story?
I hope they remember that everyone has the power to make a difference. Jane's legacy lives on, not just in the organizations that are continuing their work, but in everyone who stands up for what's right, everyone who fights for justice, everyone who believes in a better future.
And their story is a reminder that even when things feel impossible, when we work together, we can accomplish amazing things. It's a legacy that deserves to be remembered, a legacy that's worth fighting for. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the incredible story of the Jane Collective.